Hello Renaissance artists, I'm Jessica Henry, welcoming you back to my studio today. This is lesson 3 of our watercolor unit, and today we have a kind of fun lesson planned. I thought it'd be interesting to take a picture. We're going to break it down and just take it step by step. The twist on this lesson, as opposed to last week's lesson, is you're going to do your own pictures. So I'm going to show you how to take this picture, and I'm going to show you just my thought processes and how I'm going to work it out. So I'm going to turn the camera here. And so you see here what I have on my computer is just this beautiful goldfish, and there's actually 2 in the picture, so I'm going to have to weed out that other one. And I'm just going to do this one. And I've already drawn him on my paper right here, and I have taped off the boundaries, and this is a 6-inch square, so you can do this with your paper, and you're welcome to do this goldfish if you'd like, or you can of course choose your own. So when I pick a picture that I like, I look for something that's going to be kind of simple, especially if I'm just starting. So I have selected this goldfish, and what I like is that there are 3 distinct values. I've got this beautiful light of the white of the tail, and this brilliant gold shimmer on the belly, and this vibrant reddish orange on his head. And then I love the little bits of green in here. So I've got this almost a secondary color scheme going. Remember when we talked about that in the first lesson? A lot of compositional paintings are strong based on their color patterns. So we were talking about primary color schemes. Well, this one we're going to do a secondary color scheme. So we've got the orange, green, and then I'm going to add more violets to the background. So I'm making that conscious choice as I'm working through this painting. So, all right, so I know I'm going to use that color scheme, the secondary color scheme, and then I haven't drawn in the leaves yet, so I'll just paint those in place when I get to that point. I know as I'm doing this, I'm going to leave the white of the paper the brightest whites. Okay, so that's going to be my first step. So I'm already consciously thinking, okay, leave that white. What am I going to paint next? Well, then I'm going to paint probably this light, soft gray in the tail. And then I'm going to tackle the brilliant yellow in his body, and maybe the soft peach on his head. And I'll paint as much of an area that color as I can. And then I'll layer another color over the top. So for example, when I paint his head, I'll paint it peach, the whole thing, and then I'll layer just over the cheek and over the eye area a more brighter red, and then over the lower cheek, after that's dry, I'll paint a darker red or reddish orange over that down below. Okay, so that's basically how I'm going to work this. I know I'm going to do leave the white of the paper the white, then I'm going to paint the grays, then I'm going to paint that brilliant yellow. So that's how I'm going to tackle the fish. The first thing I need to consider then is, okay, that's how I'm going to do that. What's the next? How do I approach the entire painting? So I'm going to put a layer of color over the whole paper. Then I'm going to build it up in step by step, and you'll see how I do that. Okay. So I've drawn on my fish. All right, so I've drawn on the fish with just a 4H pencil and just my simple eraser, and I use the artist tape to tape it off. And then I have some extra paper here on the side to where I'll just test and sample my colors. I have my glass of water, and I woke up my paints. I put a little bit of water in each of the colors, and let's get going. So, like I said, the first thing I have to do is figure out my plan of attack with the whole picture. So I'm going to paint, like I said, I wanted to paint some more violet in the background, so I'm going to do a very light shade of just purple, like a very soft purple. So let's use ultramarine blue, get a nice big puddle. I'm using my mop brush for this because I'm just going to paint pretty much the whole thing. And then I'm going to take a very short, just stubby brush to sort of erase out some of the areas where I want the white. So that's okay to do that if it's a little area. So I'm going to use some alizarin crimson into that blue. So how's that color? That looks fine. Let's do that. All right, starting at the top, and my table is sloped a little bit, so my puddle will just go all the way down. I'm just going to go ahead and go over the fish. Let's do the whole thing. Why not? I was thinking that I would take black ink and paint it over the whole background and then just let him just really glow, but I changed my mind since I thought, you know, I'm going to go with the secondary color scheme. I think that that's going to be more instructive. So that was what I did. Just put a little bit more on there. I'm just taking it a little bit darker while it's wet and going back over some of that around the fish. So that puddle will go all the way down. I just have my napkins here. I'll dry that up at the bottom. Now, while it's still wet, I'm gonna get my little stubby eraser brush wet. So now it's mostly dry. And I'm gonna go in and wipe out where I want it white. Clean my brush off. Like that. And you can see how that kind of lifts out that paint. I'm gonna also lift it out where I see the yellow, because I want that to be a clean, bright yellow under there. Let's lift that out a little bit better. And maybe down here. Okay, so that's fine. And while that's drying, I'm gonna work on, maybe I'll mix up another shade for the background color, just a teeny bit darker, and then I'll get into painting the fish. I'm going to paint this around the fish a little bit, because I do prefer to, like I said before, go from the background to the foreground. And since it's underwater, I'm just going to keep it really soft and light. I'm not going to go too much into a lot of details and darks in the backgrounds. But I do want to put some of that green grass in. So I'm just going to sort of suggest watery things back here. And you can see I'm keeping my violet pretty much that nice middle tone purple color. You can go more blue if you want, or more red, whatever, if you're painting the fish. If you're painting from your own picture, then you'll want to, like I talked about at the beginning, just kind of make a plan of attack and figure out what you're going to do that way. Okay, so this is a size 6 sable brush that I'm using here today, just around. I'm going to try to go around the fishtail a little bit, because I really want to control the colors that I paint on the tail itself. And so because the background was wet when I painted this on, it's sort of blurring a fuzziness around the fish. As long as I don't get it too close, it'll just kind of blur right up to the edge a little bit like that. I'll just make it look like he's floating in this beautiful violet water. But I think you'll see by doing this color scheme. Remember too, where we talked about in the very first watercolor lesson, the ratio of the color scheme matters too. So in the examples that I was pointing out, they had some of one of the colors of the color scheme was dominant. It was about 3/4 to 2/3 of the painting was that one color. And then the second color in that pattern was about 1/2 or so, or less, 1/3. And then the last piece of the puzzle of the color scheme was just an accent. So while that's drying, let's just soften that edge down below a little bit. Just taking my dry mop, just going like that. All right, I'm going to clean my brush off and just mix up some green up here. I don't feel it's necessary to do all of the leaves, but just some. I just want to give it, this is the 2/3, and then the fish is the secondary part of it, and then the green is the accent. So I don't mind if it's a little bit wet, because these leaves will look more like they're in the background if they're kind of fuzzy. And I'm just taking little joots. When it's drier, I can come back through here and put a few more in that are brighter, and they'll look like they're a little bit closer. This fish, I took this picture of this fish. It was at the Central Park Zoo in New York. It's so pretty. Okay, now a little bit brighter green, darker. This is ultramarine blue and cad yellow medium. And I'll test that color there. I think that looks good. That still might be a little bit wet, but let's put some in. And one of the things that you really do have to learn is how much water to paint on and when to put it on, because that can quickly get out of hand. If you get too much water in your puddle and in your brush, and it'll run away from you. So practice those washes and get comfortable with how much paint. What does that look and feel like when the brush looks like this or that? All right, now I don't want to get carried away with adding too much green, because this is still 2/3 and this is the accent. All right, so I'll come back later to that and add some more. So for now, I'm back to doing the fish. So what I'm going to do is set that brush down and get my little stubby one, and I'm just going to clean up around the edges. Clean, dry brush. I'm bringing some of this purple down to the edge of the fish, just because some of the places it didn't flow all the way down, and some it overlapped onto the fish. So I just want to get in there and just clean up the edges a little bit. If you get too much water on your brush, it'll flow into the background, and then we'll have more trouble. So just softening that a little bit there, and then down there. You can hear that kind of just rubs a little bit. That's pretty dry. See, the brush is very, very dry. It's only slightly damp so that it will lift a little bit of color. And if you find it gets too dry, go ahead and get it wet, and you can dry it off again. And go back to that. Okay. All right, I think that works. That's all we need. I am going to wait until this is completely dry, because I don't want these white clear colors to kind of blend into the background here. I mean the grayish color. So while that's drying, I am going to take some of this purple and I'll add a little bit more blue. And remember, to get gray, what do? We add our complement to the color. So in this case, I've got mostly blue. I'm going to add some burnt sienna to that, and that'll give me gray. So let's see. Remember, the color of your puddle is going to be a darker value than what's underneath it. So even if you test it, if you just dab a dot, it looks like a dark puddle. You have to move that puddle so you can see what color is underneath it, and you can see it's much lighter there. And I think that that's a pretty good value for what I'm seeing as the next lightest light on the fish after the white. So let's go in here. That's dry now. Oh, I'm using this junk brush. I guess that's okay. Dry it off. Sometimes you gotta dry it a little bit, just because it gets too heavy with water and paint. And then under here. Always be flicking your eyes back and forth to your image. I find it useful and helpful just to keep the image just on my computer screen, and I'm always looking back at it because you can get it so big on your screen, and as opposed to printing it, your printer often will do pictures not the right color. So save the ink and just keep your computer screen right by your desk. I move my computer around all the time, and I just find it useful just to have right here. Okay, so I think that that's looking good. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take a little bit of green and just put it behind here to suggest a transparent tail. Like we're seeing the green seaweed through his fins just a little bit. Just a little. Don't go nuts. Okay, I think that looks fine. Now I'm going to do it for this tail down here, just taking some of that gray. And there really isn't any green behind this tail, so I'm not going to put any green there. I'm going to paint it over this whole area because even though it's orange up there, it's in shadows, so I think it makes sense that there's a shadow on the orange too. So we'll paint orange over that gray just in that area. And then this fin is getting a lot of shadow, so we'll paint this down here. Such a beautiful fish, isn't it? Wow. I think God had fun on the day he made these fish. Look at that. I'll paint the whole thing in shadow and then we'll come back over that with color. And then let's put some shadow on this upper fin too. Because that's mostly, there's a rim of bright right along the top, so I'm going to carefully not paint that top bony part of the fin up there because I want that to be brighter. Okay, now we're going down. Cleaning this off, this is actually my eraser. It's not supposed to be my good painting brush. So I'm erasing some of these areas where I wanted the brighter white. There we go. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to go back to my nice brush, clean it out. And I'm going to, this is dry, so I was going to clean up this puddle of green, but I think I'll just use it real quick to paint the rest of the green on here, and then I'll clean it up. Get rid of it, because we're done with the green then after that. Well, there's a little bit on the body, but I can mix that up separate. Just let that go, like fluffy little roots. And if you think flowing in the water, just on a breeze, under the sea, if you think that, then your paintings have a tendency to reflect what's going on in your mind. I do that when I'm painting clouds. I think light, fluffy thoughts. I mean, I'm conscious and aware of shapes of clouds and structures and forms and cool and warm values and all those different things, but bearing in mind the essence of a cloud or the feel of seaweed under the water, you definitely want to try to capture that more than anything else. All right, I think that has the feel I'm looking for. There we go. Okay, now we're going to get into that brilliant yellow. I'm going to clean up my palette here and get rid of the green. Saving some of this gray because we'll be using that a little bit more. I'll use more green, but for now that's fine to clean it up. All right, so brilliant yellow. I think we're going to take some of this. Remember how we were using the praying yellow? I still have it here on my palette. So I'm going to take some of that and some cad yellow. Yeah, that looks good. Let's paint this over the whole fish. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I'm not going to paint it in all parts of the tail. Just in places where there's either orange or yellow. And then we'll build up in layers. So you know what? This is a vertical wash, so we're going to turn the paper this way and go down. Let's just go right over the eye too. Drag that puddle down. I want this a little bit lighter up here, so all I did was added a drop of water to that wash. And now I'm going to drag it down. This little fin is orange, but we use yellow to make orange, so we're going to start with yellow on it. And this fin, just paint the whole thing yellow, except where it's white. And then down here too, this one. Remember, just that lower portion there like that is orange, so we're painting it yellow to start out with. Now I want to turn this way so that I can see a little bit better what I'm doing on the tail, because there are some really unique places here that I want to make sure I don't mess up. So I just painted yellow where I didn't want to mess up, so I'm taking my eraser brush, getting it wet and rubbing it out. So it's a little bit forgiving there. You can take care of some mistakes as long as you get to them quickly. Grabbing that yellow. And then down here too. See how by putting that grayish down first and then painting the yellow over that, it starts to look like that's already in shadow. All right, so right into this yellow, I'm gonna take, let's take our cad red medium. I think, actually it's scarlet. It doesn't matter if it's cad red light or cad red scarlet or whatever, or even just your standard red. Let's test this. That looks great for the head. Let's put this where we see that reddish orange. I'll just paint that over the whole head. Remember I was talking at the beginning about painting this in layers? So we're going to do that here. Wipe the puddle brush off and suck up that puddle. Take a little bit more and we'll get it on the front side of this fin. And then I'm going to add, well, actually this top fin has more of this shade of orange on it, so we're going to put this where I see it up here. Not over the whole thing because some of that is white. Wipe that off. I want to soften this edge a little bit where the orange meets the white. And I dried it off, wiped it off, and then I just took it right back onto the painting and let it just sort of blend there. Okay. Now I'm going to mix up a little bit more brighter orange color for the body. So yellow, that's cad yellow medium. We're grabbing some more of that scarlet, but this is just darker. It's just a darker red. I'm not using as much water for this wash. Let's test that. Great. All right, now I'm not going to paint where I see the yellow on the fish. So let's just go around wherever I see yellow. dragging this puddle. It's significantly darker down here under the belly, so we'll come back over this with a few more layers. Now the only thing I regret about this is that you can't see how often I'm looking at the original picture. I look at that more than I'm looking at my drawing. I'm constantly flipping my eyes back to that, just so I can see exactly where I'm supposed to paint things. So when you're working on this on your own, be looking at your reference picture of whatever it is you're doing, much more even than what you're doing on your own picture. It's you just have to, we don't keep it in our mind for very long what the image really did look like. Okay, I think that looks all right there. And then under the tail, down under here, we have it more shadowy. I want to get some of this fin over here. I like that that kind of bled down. I think that looks neat. So I'm going to go with that. It was there anyway, so we're just painting this layer. I'm going to kind of let this bleed down a little bit more, drying my brush off. Just bleed that down into the clear too. So it just has that shadow look. And this actually comes down more. Am I missing anything? There's this one. Okay, I'm going to take this stubby brush and just lift out a little bit more here where that orange it crowded my yellow too much. So I want some of that to come back. Come back. And then up here too. That looks good. Okay. So that is my second layer on this fish. First layer was the yellow. Well, actually, the first layer was the white. Then it was the yellow. Then it was this intermediate shade of orange. Now I'm going to come back and work on the head. And so I'm going to get a little bit more scarlet or cad red medium, whatever you have. That looks pretty good for a second shade. Okay, so we're only going to paint this, not over the whole head, just about maybe half the head. Starting at the top, or not the top, about the top. And then we're going to drag that puddle all the way down. And a little bit on the belly here. Wipe the brush off, and then we're going to come back up in here and just soften it a little bit. And soften this down here. I guess we can take some of that and put a little bit more of it up on this fin because it's so pretty. And this one just looks more red up here anyway. I like that more of that contrast too, between this fin and the body. We'll take some of this. On the tail here, there's a swoop of red. So I'm coming in here and just making these really elegant little swoops. And we'll go under here too. Let's take a little bit of that brownish grayish blue, just a nice little bit darker down there. Wipe the brush off. We're gradating this wash. Wipe the brush off. I rinsed it off and then wiped it off. And then we'll come back through here and just kind of let that fade away. Okay. Let's take a little bit more of that pinky white red. That's too dark. Wipe the brush off. We're going to just blend that out a little bit more. Okay. I'm keeping track of this water break here because I don't want that to get like a hard line. So I'm just double checking. You can kind of stop that if you go back through and just rub it a little bit with your dry brush, your dryish wet brush. Pull this all the way down. Now I'm starting to think scales. So if you can see with my brush, I'm kind of dabbing a little bit in here just so it has more of that scale-like effect. Okay, let's take some of that red and go down this fin too. Looks like it wants to anyway. All right. So we're getting those beautiful intermediate colors. Now I'm going to go through and hit the darks. So let's get more of the scarlet. And how do we darken an orange? We use its complement. And so in this case, the opposite of orange is blue. Okay, so right there is about a purple, and that really was just that scarlet. So I'm going to add a little bit more yellow to that. And there we go. That's a nice, good shadow color for his cheek down here. And I'm sure it's just a teeny bit damp, so I'm going to come back in here. And I don't care if I go right over the eye, because I'm going to come back through at the end with an almost black and paint it over the eye. And over here. A lot of watercolor is dealing with a very light touch and just clean, simple washes and layers. Knowing how to break down a painting or a photo into the different steps is half the battle of watercolor painting. The other half is, of course, application and clean, simple washes. If you can master those, how to break it down and how to do a clean, simple wash, the rest is easy. Let's try that off. I just want to soften this a little bit. Okay. And under here. Just about like that. I think that's starting to come together. Let's put a little bit more shadow up in here. And this brush is almost dry now. And I want some of that beautiful orange to stay peeking through. So I'll kind of just let that do its little thing. soften this. Okay. Now, is that dry? No, not quite. We're just going to let that really dry for now. I think while that's drying, I'm going to make a little bit darker color just for some of this background back here while I'm letting that do its thing. I want to set off the top part of his tail more with a little darker background. That'll make it really jump and pop. I should be dragging the wash this way. Okay, so we're going to bring this up. See, that'll just give this fin and the top part of the fish just a little bit more drama if you give it a little darker accent. All right, so now I'm just going to kind of let this fade away. And I have a little bit more water on my brush, like that. Just soften and clean that a little bit. While the rest of that fish is drying, I'm going to pull it down here a little bit more too. It's okay that I'm painting over the seaweed. That's okay. Some of it. I'll paint over some of it, and some of it I'll let stay. Maybe a little bit down here. Okay, well, I feel better about that. That has more impact now. Okay, now I just want to pop in these dark, rich colors, these vibrant colors, because they're a little bit muted, more muted than I would like. So I'm gonna grab some of the scarlet, just bright, clean, not mixed with anything. Test that. All right. That's what we need. Wipe my brush off and let that sort of blend up in there. And then drag the rest of this down. And then over here. And these now, I'm really thinking scales, so I'm drawing little scales with my brush, that bright red. I'm going to take some of that cad yellow now, just to make a really bright orange, and get up in here and around and get some of these scales. And you can see too, I'm just doing the little scales, they're little half C's. They're like this. That's all I'm doing. I'm letting some of them blur and blend in together. I don't want to do too many either, just suggest. Okay. And then while I have this violet down here, these fish scales down here get pretty dark. So I'm just getting right into that. I didn't even rinse my brush off. Just grabbed it. And I see it down over here too. Very dark. As the belly turns, these are the fish of our lives. Like that. But see how by darkening around some of these areas that are lit, it makes it look more like it's glowing when you darken something. And so that is getting the effect I was looking for. And bring this down. And then over here a little bit too. Okay, let's get this a little darker up here so that it really looks like it's being cast in shadow. And you can see, you can just build up these layers and layers and layers if you want. As long as you don't scrub each layer. By scrubbing, you can make it look overworked and muddy. If you just do a nice gentle layer, let it dry, come back over it with another color, you should be good. I am going to clean that off and just soften that a little bit because I thought it looked a little too scratchy. Okay, now I think it's ready for a little black eye. So what I have on here for my tiniest brush, and we're not going to make this look inked today, this is it. I'm just going to take my little itty bitty teeny brush and get some burnt sienna. Sometimes the paint's dry on you, just grab a little bit of water. A little burnt sienna and some ultramarine blue. You can use black if you want, but I prefer just to make this nice little mixture myself. Not very much water, just a teeny bit in there. Okay, coming over here. It's looking dry enough. I am going to take a little bit of this while I have it on here, just kind of outline where his mouth is. Just a little. It's up there somewhere. Maybe I'll pop in a few little accent places. And then I liked the way that this tail curled up that way. So I'm going to clean the top line of this one. It looked kind of messy. And you can clean up whatever you want, as much as you want. Maybe a little bit more dark in that eye. The trick with watercolor is to just be patient at times, and then at other times, know when you have to work really fast. I'm going to take a little bit more of this cad yellow, just clean, bright cadmium yellow, a little bit of the praying yellow, clean my brush off. I have a lot of black in there. Clean and bright. I'm going to come back in here and just do some of these scales and just really pop them in place. Just where I see them. All right. And I think that that about does it. All right, well, I wanted to thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next week. Bye.